Right, and welcome back. Of course, just looking at the sidebar there on your screen at the moment, 20 million rand drug bust that has taken place in Midrand, and this is news just coming through. And of course, it is a developing story. This is a multidisciplinary team effort that was led by crime intelligence, and this bust having gone down, and one man has been arrested, as you can see in that particular space there, and police have found cocaine on the small holding, of course, following a tip-off. So that is the story. It is a developing story, and we'll bring you more on that as soon as we are able to get in touch with the authorities. Right, moving on to our interview now, where the Constitution of South Africa provides for the rights and the protection of whistleblowers with laws such as the Protected Disclosures Act and the Protection Against Harassment Act. And yet, many continue to pay the ultimate price for their efforts to uncover the truth and expose corruption in this country. So to highlight this, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development says that it is reviewing some of its whistleblower protection legislations, a move that will result in new comprehensive whistleblower protection frameworks. Now, this will be enough, or will it be, to protect whistleblowers in the current challenging times? And to talk to us about this, we joined in studio this morning by Dorothy Mmushi, who is the Director of Seekers Finders Forensics and also a whistleblower herself. Dorothy, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to the viewers. Thank you for having me this morning.
Absolute pleasure. So let's just start with, where we find ourselves currently with regard to whistleblowers and the legislation that has already been enacted to try and protect, but not just protect, but also encourage people to blow the whistle where corruption is happening. Has it been adequate?
Currently, the legislation that we have in place is inadequate in that it doesn't make provision for the protection of whistleblowers. And I'm referring specifically to the Protected Disclosures Act. It doesn't cover segments, especially in relation to people who blow the whistle as a result of their fiduciary duties. You must remember that there are individuals that are tasked with detecting fraud, corruption, or any form of crime. We're referring to individuals who are in the forensic investigation space, the auditing space, and the investigators. So when you end up blowing the whistle as a result of your fiduciary duty, it doesn't elaborate how you will be protected from potential occupational detriment, and also what avenues can be followed in making sure that you are kept safe. So there needs to be amendments to that. And on Monday, we were at the Whistleblowing Summit. And yes, definitely, the Deputy National Commissioner of Justice did say the department is looking into reviewing these acts to make sure that we are better protected and we are encouraged to blow the whistle.
And it's all well and good, to say the right things, to tick the correct boxes, but ultimately it comes down to making sure that people actually feel safe enough for them to do the right thing, to blow the whistle against corruption. And in your own case, speaking of blowing the whistle at Eskom, let's talk about that and how you found yourself in that position and what subsequently transpired.
Yeah, that was a very traumatic experience that I'll never forget throughout my career, in that I blew the whistle as a result of a fiduciary duty that I had. And the employer did not protect me from forms of victimization. Instead, people who were tasked with protecting me victimized me further. For example, I got irregularly suspended from work. I had an attempted assassination against my life. I was even arrested unlawfully by the SAPS. And the sad thing is, if you listen to a lot of whistleblowing stories, there is involvement of the SAPS further victimizing whistleblowers, in that they will bring about trampled charges against you just to either discredit your credibility as a whistleblower. So being a whistleblower is a very difficult space to find yourself in. You will suffer occupational detriment, you will suffer financially, because there is instances where people will even take civil action against you for blowing the whistle. And you also lose your job. And there's also emotional and psychological implications for doing that. So it's a very difficult space to find yourself in. And further, you are unemployable. When you put your CV out there, because you are known for blowing the whistle, people overlook you because you are then labeled and stigmatized as a troublemaker, and which shouldn't be in this day and age. Whistleblowers should be encouraged and actually be recognized for their efforts, because it's not an easy step to take. And sometimes it's not even intentional. As I said, sometimes it's as a result of a fiduciary duty. You are obligated to disclose when you have identified wrongdoing.
And then I really want to delve into your story, because it's important given what we are currently dealing with as a country following Lieutenant General Mkwanazi's allegations against members across the criminal justice system in terms of how they may have covered up in wrongdoing. And of course, it takes the whistleblowers to bring all of these things to light. Otherwise, we would not know. Otherwise, in certain instances, things would not be corrected. So Eskom, we know from the Zondo Commission, was one of the biggest crime scenes when it came to state capture. So what exactly did you uncover at Eskom? And talk to us in a little more granular detail about how your efforts were thwarted and your life made difficult.
Okay. So with Eskom, you're correct in saying Eskom is a crime scene. And I believe that till today it is a crime scene. At the time that I was employed by Eskom, I uncovered widespread fraud in relation to the procurement system, in that there were suppliers who were invoicing Eskom millions for work that has not even been done. They would issue invoices for items that are not even yet manufactured by the original equipment manufacturer. For example, the purchasing of valves, where the original equipment manufacturer will say, we've never even manufactured such a valve. So how does that supplier then deliver something that's non-existent in industry? So for me as a forensic investigator, I felt that this is quite blatant that these people were involved in fraudulent conduct, which I tried to have these suppliers come forth to account and say, where did they deliver these items to? And as a result of that, I then started being intimidated, being threatened, and I disclosed this information to my then superiors to say, I'm now getting death threats as a result of what I have uncovered. And as a result of that, these individuals were then involved in hiring a hitman to have me assassinated.
Dorothy, were you at any point able to unmask who these people were bringing these threats against you?
Yes, I was. And the unfortunate part is, once I had also discovered who the individuals were, this information was given to the SAPS. And the SAPS has done nothing with that information. And I can tell you for a fact, the hitman that was supposed to have assassinated me was identified. I assisted the police in showing them who this individual is. And they never had him arrested. Instead, he got arrested for going to commit a heist in Mpumalanga. And after he had committed the heist, he even further was released on bail for committing the heist, and he went and assassinated a police officer in Mpumalanga. So that just shows you how corrupt the entire system is, because had that individual been arrested for my case, we could have saved the life of a police officer.
And with regard to the fraud that was being committed at Eskom, those who were paid for, as you say, equipment that doesn't even exist in industry, but invoices were submitted and I would imagine paid.
That is correct.
So was anyone held accountable for that?
No one was held accountable as far as I know. And investigation reports were compiled that detailed the type of fraud and corruption and the modus operandi that was followed in these fraudulent activities. And nothing was done with that information. Hence, I took a stance to say, let us at least block these suppliers from continuing to do business with Eskom until this entire investigation process has been concluded.
Has that happened?
Well, as far as I know, that hasn't happened.
So, Dorothy, who was supposed to follow up and deal with your allegations? Let's say they were allegations at the time when you brought this to light. who was supposed to deal with that and make sure that they verified and actioned whatever was wrong?
Okay, the challenge with this is that I was reporting to a senior manager. So that senior manager was supposed to have made sure that my recommendations are being addressed, in that that information would have been dealt with by the end user, the various departments in which this fraud took place in. But now that didn't happen, because at the end of the day, the hitman even mentioned that your actual manager, the person that you are reporting to, was involved in hiring in your assassination attempt.
Is that person still in the employ of Eskom?
That particular individual is not in the employ of Eskom, but however, he has been since employed in another municipal department, and Tshwane municipality to be specific. And for me, that is also a letdown. It's disappointing that an individual can be in an environment in government and cause so much turmoil to a forensic unit and still be employable within government. And to date, I ask myself whether the city of Tshwane did vet this individual, because the turmoil that he caused within Eskom forensics is it's unrepairable. He intimidated forensic investigators. Forensic audit report findings were changed. And I can relate this to the Mpoma Fole situation. Remember, with Mpoma Fole, he had issued a forensic investigation report, which was later changed by his boss. And as a result, during that period, that's when this whole assassination took place.
Mpoma Fole is in Ekurhuleni.
Yes. That's the late Mpoma Fole.
So, and you know, just looking at what has happened, for their part, SAPS, have they followed up? Have they kept you abreast of developments in the investigation?
No, they have not kept me abreast. I even had follow-up meetings with General Lebeya when he was still with the Hawks, and I wanted to know what was being done, because they knew the identity of the individual. He was supposed to have provided them with further information of who had hired him to assassinate me, but that investigation died a slow death. And instead, I was actually even shunned upon and looked down on for expressing my views in the media. I was told, you speak too much in the media.
And nothing has been done. So if we look at, you know, the current framework to protect whistleblowers from the summit that you've attended this week, what do you think can and should be done to actually tighten the controls and make sure that whistleblowers can feel free to come forward and that they would be protected after blowing the whistle?
What came out of the summit was that there needs to definitely be regulatory reforms, in that the acts that are governing whistleblowing should be better adjusted and amended to suit the current landscape. So that will assist and encourage whistleblowers to come forth. And further, we need to create a culture of encouraging whistleblowing, because historically, if you are a whistleblower, you are seen as an impimpi. So people do not have respect and recognition for whistleblowers. So hence, it's up to institutions such as public interest group to advocate for whistleblowing so that people are encouraged to come out. And further, if you look at some of the policies in organizations where they say you've got a non-disclosure agreement, some of those non-disclosure agreements are limiting for people to be able to blow their whistle on wrongdoing that they discover within an organization. And further, we need to, as I said, as a society, have a culture of saying, do the right thing by reporting what your suspicions are.
But how do you encourage people to do the right thing, given your own experience, given the Mafole case, the Babita Deokaran case, so many others, you know, Cindy Somakata, and we can go on and on. People who have paid the ultimate price for blowing the whistle on corruption in this country. How do we then encourage people? How do we convince people that they should continue to do what is morally and ethically correct?
I think it's up to government to start ensuring that cases that relate to whistleblowers receive the attention that it deserves. It even starts within organizations. If there is a matter that has been reported by whistleblowers, let there be consequence management. Let there be disciplinary action being taken as a result of forensic investigations, because this is an entire value chain. And for a forensic investigation process to take place, it starts with the reporting, which is mostly done by whistleblowers. Most of the work that investigators and auditors do is reliant on whistleblowing. So once you encourage them by showing them the results of their contribution, it will definitely encourage whistleblowing.
But also, you know, and I remember this particularly struck me during the Mafole case, because looking at what Mafole was working on in terms of these accounts that were somehow paid but not paid to the municipalities' accounts. And you look at the fact that those were businesses, those were individual households, and that means ordinary South Africans who were complicit in that fraud. And very often we don't look at that aspect of what is going on. We look at, you know, the big fish, so to speak. But surely there needs to be something said about everyone else who contribute to this value chain that ultimately ends in needing a whistleblower who, in some instances, ultimately pay the ultimate price.
I agree with you, and I need to elaborate on this. You know, with the tendering space, this is as a result of the high unemployment rate. A lot of individuals have now gone into the business space, and part of those individuals are people who are criminals. Your retired criminals have realized that it's lucrative to go into the tendering space. These are individuals who've been used to acts of violence. So they come into the tendering space with the mindset of extortion and intimidation. And when these individuals are being investigated, what do? They use what they're used to, violence, to retaliate against such. So it's important that the value chain of the tendering system needs to be vetted. Even suppliers that are doing business with government should be vetted, because in that way you are protecting even employees of government departments should there be a need to cause these individuals to account for their wrongdoing.
And one can understand when people are almost fatalistic about what is going on at the moment, because the problem seems so deep and sometimes even insurmountable if you take the fact into consideration that even those in law enforcement who are supposed to act against these allegations and investigate don't do so. In some instances, they find themselves embroiled and become central figures in the fraud and the cover-up that follows. So how do we continue to ask and encourage South Africans to come forward? Because why would I do that if I listen to your story and the great cost that, you know, you've had as a result of blowing the whistle, and others who've paid with their lives?
I think it also starts from leadership, and I'm referring to the executive here, politicians. Our politicians should be the ones who are at the forefront of encouraging whistleblowing. But as we know, we're not seeing that, because even with the Madlanga Commission now, we've realized that you've got your law enforcement and politicians who are also involved and embroiled in the corrupt activities that take place in society. And also with the investigations of tenders and fraud, we have realized that there's political interference in there. So they will not come forth as politicians to say, we are going to give attention to these issues of whistleblowing. Oh, there's a whistleblower. How do we better protect this person? How do we better encourage this individual? Instead, they are the very same people that oppress whistleblowers and do nothing to assist them.
Would you still encourage South Africans to do the right thing, and why? Why should they?
Under my circumstances, I would definitely still encourage whistleblowing, in that, as I said, it's a very pivotal, it plays a pivotal role in solving crime. So it's important that whistleblowers come forth. The best advice I can give is for an individual to remain anonymous. Remain anonymous if it is possible for you to withhold your identity, because the repercussions of being a whistleblower are quite dire. It's not an easy process. It's not for the weak. And unfortunately, a lot of people lack the resilience. I've been resilient, and I still stand by my word. I will find justice in terms of what has happened to me.
Dorothy Mmushi, thanks so much for your bravery, and thanks for speaking to us this morning, Dorothy Mmushi. Who was the director of Seekers Finders Forensics and a whistleblower, talking to us about her experience and the gaps in the current laws that are meant to protect the safety of whistleblowers.